or the Judgment of Hunefer. So, who was Hunefer? Hunefer was a royal scribe. A scribe such as Hunefer would have copied documents in hieroglyphics or other forms of ancient Egyptian text. He would have most likely been born into a family of writers, scribes, and he would have gotten a good education. So, how do we know so much about this man, Hunefer? He wasn't a pharaoh or a king, but he was clearly of high status. And we know this because he was educated. Well, the ancient Egyptians were amazing storytellers. They combined illustrations, symbols, and hieroglyphics to create a story that could be read both visually and phonetically. Ancient Egyptians were polytheistic, which means they believed in many gods. And it was important for them to please these gods so that their ka could travel into the afterlife. For Egyptians, the afterlife was paradise. However, before getting to the afterlife, the deceased would have to travel through a series of tests, and this is where Hunefer's scroll comes into play. This book is an example of an ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. The ancient Egyptian Books of the Dead were funerary texts that were used for about 1,500 years. They took the form of spells and illustrations that were inscribed into papyrus roll. Papyrus is a material that is made from the papyrus plant that grows along the Nile River. Ancient Egyptians often buried these scrolls with the deceased either in the mummy wrapping itself or in their tombs. The spells written on the scrolls gave the soul the knowledge and the power it needed to navigate the underworld in order to get to the afterlife. These books were written by highly talented scribes, like Hunefer, and often more than one scribe would work on a text. Perhaps Hunefer worked on his, but that we don't know for certain. What we do know is that the scroll is written beautifully in black and red ink. The first books of the dead were prepared for elite people, but by the New Kingdom in Egypt, around 1570 to 1069 BCE, they had become more mainstream, and even if you're not born into high status, you could achieve a place in the afterlife. The ancient Egyptians had other names for these scrolls, such as Going Forth by Day. No one book is the same. Hunefer's scroll is unique in the sense that it is so beautifully written, and it has survived intact for so long. In Hunefer's book, we see sections that contain images of what are essential items put in one's tomb, images that depict the mummification process or spiritual practices related to mummification, and illustrations of the gods and deities of ancient Egypt. This particular scroll is on display at the British Museum. A common theme in the Books of the Dead is the weighing of one's heart. Most scrolls illustrate this ceremony. This is the last task for the deceased to pass in order to get into the afterlife. The heart was believed to be the most important organ to the ancient Egyptians. It was the seat of intellect. Ancient Egyptians did not care for the brain. In fact, that was discarded after death. So let's decipher these images a little closer. Here, the scene reads from left to right. Looking at this section of Hunefer's scroll, we see that at the top, there is an image of Hunefer, the man in white, crouching in front of a line of deities. This is a depiction of one of those tasks that Hunefer has to pass in order to get into the afterlife. Hunefer must tell these deities about the good life that he's lived. Thus, he is illustrated with his arms out, and he is telling these gods that he has been just. Moving downwards towards the left, Anubis, the jackal-headed god of embalming and death, leads Hunefer into the Hall of Judgment. He is holding the symbol of eternity, the Ankh. Anubis is then seen adjusting the scales to weigh the dead man's heart against a feather. This process of weighing the heart against a feather is that final task that must be passed to get into the afterlife. The symbol of Ma'at, the goddess of truth and right doing, appears at the top of the scales. Hunefer's heart is lighter than the feather, which means he has lived a good life. His heart will not be devoured by Amit, the beast that hungrily waits to eat it, had it been heavier than the feather. Amit is a strange beast. He is part alligator, he has a mane, he has the front paws of a lion and the back legs of hippopotamus. So moving forward, we see a figure with the head of a bird, an ibis, and that's Thoth, the god of knowledge, and he is often depicted writing. In this image, he is recording the event that's taking place. Moving forward, we see the image of Hunefer repeated again, the man in white, and this time he is following Horus, the god of kingship, who is also the son of Osiris. And he's following Horus in order to meet Osiris, who will invite Hunefer into the afterlife. Horus is also holding the Ankh, the symbol of eternity. Horus also appears as a falcon, which is his other form, flying above Osiris and leading Hunefer to him. Osiris is the green figure that's enthroned. He's in a section of his own, he's elevated above the others, and he looks very important. Behind him is his sister Isis and his wife Nephesis. Osiris is holding many symbols that represent Egypt. He is also sitting near a papyrus plant. Above the plant are depiction of the cardinal points of Egypt. Another section of the scroll with amazing images is the opening of the mouth ceremony. Here we see another set of illustrations that are drawn similarly to the images we previously looked at. The centerpiece of the upper scene is the mummy of Hunefer. Behind him, we see Anubis, the god of mummification and death, holding the mummy upright. Hunefer's wife and daughter mourn his body. Behind him, 3 priests perform rituals. The 2 priests with white sashes are carrying out the opening of the mouth ritual. The white building at the right is a representation of the tomb, complete with a false doorway and a small pyramid. A false doorway is an illustration of a door where the Ka, or the spirit, can leave through. To the left of the tomb is a picture of a stele, which would have stood to one side of the tomb entrance. The stele is shown much larger than normal size, in order for us to read it. On the stele is an image of Osiris being worshipped. At the right of the lower scene is a table bearing various implements needing for the opening of the mouth ritual. At the left, we see a calf with 1 leg missing, and this is very sad. The leg would have been cut off while the calf was alive for the ceremony, and then the young calf would have been sacrificed. To put a nail in the coffin, the calf is shown together with his mother, and we can read the mother's face expression as being pretty distressed. If we move along the top of the scroll, there are more amazing images of Hunefer. One image I like in particular is one of Hunefer playing a board game. Perhaps playing board games was one of his favorite pastimes, but maybe there's also a deeper meaning behind these images. We know that the ancient Egyptians believed that you would enjoy your objects and favorite pastimes in your afterlife as well. Whatever the purpose, this gives us insight into the life of Hunefer.